Welcome back. Today, once again, I'm going to try to solve some puzzles on chess.com with the idea of getting better at chess. As far as I understand it, the whole point of puzzles is to gain pattern recognition so that when you see a similar position on the board in an actual game, you would look for the same kind of solution. If you're new to my channel, I'm not a titled player or a chess coach. I'm just a random person trying to get better at chess, or at least enjoy it while I'm here. Let's solve some puzzles. I made it to 1727 last time. Okay, in this position, my opponent has checked me. I can take their queen with my knight, but if I do, they'll take my queen. But I guess I should start at the beginning. There are three ways to get out of check. One is to capture the checking piece. Another is to block, and the other is to get out of check. It looks like I have two ways to move out of check. So those are my options, I think, in this puzzle. My only options, right? Because I can't block with any other piece except that pawn. If I block with the pawn, they're just going to take it. If I move out of check, I'm not sure what they're going to do. They might take my knight with the bishop or their knight. And I think we already said at the beginning, if I take their queen, they're going to take my queen. But then I could take their bishop. So maybe I should do a material count first, which some people say to do at the beginning anyway. My opponent has all four minor pieces. It looks like I also have all four minor pieces. We both have a queen and two rooks. My opponent looks to be a little ahead on development. They've already castled and already got all these pieces down here. I've only got one piece across the center line. So I think if we're about even on material, then going up a piece should actually be good for me, right? I don't know. Oh, it'll probably be, should I take with the... Oh, that's a good question. If they take my queen. I'm assuming that they'll take my queen, but at that point I will have the option to take with the king or the knight, and I don't know which one would be better. That's assuming that taking their queen with my knight is the best first move, which, as we saw, I have multiple options for my first move. But assuming that's correct, and then they take my queen, if I take back with the knight, then they can jump in here and fork me. And yeah, I would be up the piece, but then they would be up in exchange. So maybe at that point I should take with my king so that they can't fork me. But I'm pretty sure taking their queen's got to be the first move, right? I don't know what else. Nothing else really works. I'm going to do that. Okay, in here, like I said, I think I have to take with my king so they don't fork me. Hopefully that's right. Okay, it was. So that one was, I don't think that one was as hard as I was making it out to be. I just had to be careful on the second move and not snap take with the knight like I had originally planned. Because of this. I miss that so often in actual games. All right, next puzzle. Okay, in this puzzle, my opponent is ahead on material. They have two full extra pieces that I don't have. They are also setting up for a discovered check. Anywhere that they move this knight, it's going to be a check. And they might move the knight, if it's their turn, they would move the knight someplace where it attacks my queen so that I'm in check, have to get out of check, and then they would win my queen. So I have to look out for that, maybe. But I'm also going to operate on the assumption that I have to have a checkmate because I am so far down on material. There's no way that I would be ahead unless I have a mate here. I don't see any way for me to win three of their pieces all of a sudden or something like that. So I've got to look for checks. Oh, wow. And I talked way too long. This is just checkmate right here. I was looking at the checks with the knight. I have two checks with the knight. I was looking at this check over here, but I'm pretty sure that I have checkmate by moving the queen to e3. No, I don't. Sorry, they can block with the bishop. If that had been a rook down there on f1, then this would be checkmate. But it's not. But it is still something that I have to consider, these two checks plus the two knight checks. I like the queen to e3 anyway, even though I'm pretty sure they would be forced to block with the bishop. Then I could check with the knight, and their queen is hanging. Hold on just a second. Okay. Yeah, that's another reason to like this is because it inadvertently points at their queen. They cannot move the king because my queen is covering all four of those squares, so instead they would have to block with the bishop. Then I could check with the knight, which discovers my queen's attack on their queen, and their king still cannot come out to here or here because my queen is cutting off all of those squares, so they would be forced to move over one, and then I would not take their queen. I would checkmate down there, right? No, because they could block with the bishop again. So I think I would take their queen. Oh, but then it would be my queen and a knight against a bishop, a rook, and a knight. That should be winning, right? I'm going to try that. Okay, like I said, I think they had to do that. The other thing I have to do here, because their bishop is pinned, so I check with the knight. They only have one legal move, and then I do... Oh, no, they can't block with the bishop. That's just mate. Sorry, for some reason I thought they could block with the bishop, but I'm pretty sure that's checkmate. This has got to be it, and my knight protects that square, so... yeah, that's checkmate. Okay, wow, I almost took their queen, but then once I realized their bishop can't block because their king moved over there. Oh, wow. Okay, I think my last puzzle video, I started off with 2 or 3 in a row, and I got overconfident, and then suddenly I got a puzzle I couldn't solve, so I am expecting that to happen at any moment, In this one, my opponent is ahead by a bishop and a few pawns. No. Wow, I am playing with the white pieces, so I'm ahead by a bishop, but my opponent has 2 pawns that are both passed pawns. Yeah, I don't know why I thought both the bishop and those pawns were my opponent's, but this bishop is mine and this queen is mine. I think I have to bring the queen down to f8 because that threatens checkmate. Threats are usually difficult for me to see because usually they involve going at the wrong angle, but I think this one, I don't think they can stop that. But let's look. If I move my queen to f8, I'm threatening checkmate on g7. Their king would not be able to move at that point because of my 2 pawns cutting off those squares and my queen cutting off the corner, obviously. They can't attack my queen in any way. They can check me though. Can they do a perpetual check? I just realized they'll be able to check me on g3. Okay, so let's say I put my queen here. I am threatening mate on g7. If they push a pawn trying to promote, then I checkmate. If they capture my bishop, I take back and then I checkmate no matter what they do. So my guess is that they're going to check me here on g3, and no matter how I get out of check, they're going to take that pawn? No, because I would still have checkmate. Okay, well, let's imagine that my queen is already on f8, and they check me down here. I would have only 2 options. One would be to get out of check by moving to h1, and the other would be to block with the bishop. If I block with the bishop, I think they have to check me again, and then I can move the king up to h2. And would they be able to say, no, they wouldn't be able to safely check me again. All right, I'm going to try this. Queen to f8, which threatens checkmate. Oh, they checked me over here. Oh. Well, I completely didn't see that as a possibility. For some reason, I thought g3 was it, but e3 checks me, and now I can't block with the bishop. Now I have to move the king, but I have 2 choices. Let's see. If I go to h1, they can check me again. I can block with the bishop. Then they can check me again, and I can block with the bishop, and it's a repetition. So if I go to h2, they can check me again. Oh, I can also go to the g1, but then they can go take this pawn with check. Okay, so this is harder than I thought. All right, let's take a deep breath and look at all 3 of those again. I think the problem with g2 is that they check me by taking this pawn. And then no matter what I do to get out of check, they can take the other pawn and I'm not threatening mate anymore. And they have 2 advanced passed pawns. So I don't think it's g2. Because they might have some other resource that's winning for them, but this certainly keeps me from winning because, like I said, they get this afterward and then it's pretty much over. So I'm going to go to one of these 2. Those are my 2 candidate moves. Let's look at h2. If I move the king to h2, they have multiple ways to check me again. For example, they can come down here and check me again. They can come closer to check me again. If they came closer, I would block with the bishop, I think. But if they went over there, I guess I could block with the bishop. What if they checked me up here? I would not be able to block with the bishop. Okay, so I'm guessing if I go to h2 that they will check me on f4, in which case I would have to go to h1 anyway, or back to where I am now, because they, again, like I said, they would take the bishop. If I go to h1, they take the bishop, I go up, they can just check me all day long here, and I am certainly not winning. So that leaves h1. If I go to h1 now, they can check me here, and I can block with the bishop, and then they check me here, and I go up. Let's see, do they have any other options? If I go to h1 now, they need to check me. I think that much is clear. And they would only have, well, I'm not counting this one because my bishop would capture there. So I think this would be the only place they can check me from. I think I would block with the bishop, and then they would not have any other safe checks other than back here, in which case I go up and they can't check me again, I think. Okay, I'm going to h1. All right. Why didn't I see that one? Man, I feel dim-witted today. I thought they were going to check here, but that clearly is a check. I think we've already decided that I've got to check with the bishop. I mean, block with the bishop. Because if I just move the king, they can keep checking me on all of these purple squares here. And obviously the light squares as well when I go back to the corner. So if I block with the bishop, then they can't check me on the dark squares anymore, and I can hide up here. I'm blocking with the bishop. Okay, they did that. Now I come up, and I don't think they can safely check me again. Right? Because if they check me up here, I take it. If they check me here, I take it. I think. Let's go. Oh my goodness. Well, my brain is exhausted after that, and I used up a bunch of time on it. Is that 3? Oh yeah, it says right there, 3 in a row. Okay. Well, that's, I'm pretty sure, what I did last time. So I am now expecting an even harder puzzle, but hopefully we will power our way through it next. All right, in this one, my opponent has a queen and 2 rooks and a minor piece. I have 2 rooks and 2 minor pieces, so they're up a queen for one of my minor pieces. They're up 6 points of material, so probably it's a mate. That's what it usually is, as we said earlier. So we got to look for checks. I think we have to look for checks here. I have one obvious check is taking the pawn on c5. My rook is cutting off the d file, so they would not be able to come this way. They can't come out here because my knight is covering that square, and they can't go back there because the bishop is hitting those two squares. So that would leave them only one legal move, and then I would not check them there with the knight because their queen is guarding that square. Let's go back. If I do this, they only have one legal move. Then if I follow up with the knight check, then my bishop's not cutting off those two squares anymore, and they would go surely to one of those two squares. Because I think they would have to. No, they would not have to. They could also come to one of these two squares because my rook's not guarding them anymore. So that would be, 4 of the squares that I would be currently cutting off would not be cut off anymore if I checked there with the knight. However, if they moved to any of those squares, then I could put my knight here, and it would be checked from either the bishop or the rook, and then I would win their queen. So maybe it's not a mate. Or maybe I'll see a mate on the next turn. I will look before I take the queen. How about that? Check. Okay, I'm pretty sure that was their only legal move there. Now, my idea is this. Do they have any other recourse? They cannot capture that piece. They cannot block it. So that would leave their king free to go to any of those 4 squares. But if they went to those 2 green ones, then when I hop out with the knight, they would be in check from the bishop. If they went to 2 of those red ones, when I hopped out with the knight, they would be in check from the rook. And no matter how they got out of check, then I would win the queen because their bishop wouldn't have time to capture my knight over here. But before I do it, let's see if I have any other options. I cannot check with my bishop because it is stuck behind pawns. I can check with my rook down there, but I would just lose a rook. And if I check with my knight over on f6, their queen can capture it. And the whole point of this is to either mate or get the queen. So I'm going to check here. And now, just to be clear, let's see if we have a mate before I hop down here to take the queen. Is there anywhere else that I can move that knight that would be better than taking their queen in 2 moves? For example, if I hop over here and take this pawn, that is a check from the rook. No, then they get out. In fact, anywhere that I move the knight to check, they can get out, and then my bishop and or my knight are in danger. I think it has to be taking the queen. Okay, let's do this, then they're going to get the bishop too, though. Wait, is there something else? Because they were up a queen for a minor piece. If I take this, they take the bishop, then we're just going to be even. Well, that's better than being behind, right? And I'm pretty sure I don't have a mate. I can safely check here, but then they'll take the bishop anyway, and my rook would be in danger. Okay, I'm going to take the queen. And I'm ahead now, even though they're going to take here. I'm curious about that. I'm glad I solved it, and now I've got 4 in a row, which is the best I've done in a long time, but I am curious. Oh, it is even. No, I've made that mistake a lot. They haven't made their move yet. Their move was taking that pawn, and now I'm way ahead. So after this and that, I'm still only at +5 if I check here, and they come out, and then I check here, and they come out, and I take their queen. I'm still at +5, even though now we're not even on material. Wait, did I miscount at the beginning? I'm up a minor piece now. I must have miscounted at the beginning. Let's back up here to the beginning. I did miscount. I had 3 minor pieces, and I think I said 2. I thought they had a queen for my minor piece, but they had a queen for 2 of my minor pieces, and we each had a light squared bishop. So that makes more sense now. I wasn't evening up the material. I was actually going ahead because I'm only down about 3 points of material here. Whereas when I take the queen, I go up 9, and then when they take my bishop, I'm up 6 compared to now. So if I'm down 3 and then I go up 6 and I'm up 3, which is what happened, I think this would still be a really difficult game to win against a seasoned opponent. But anyway, I'm glad I solved it. Let's keep going. Black to move. Well, my opponent is clearly up on material here, but the rules for end games, especially pawn end games, are different, at least for me. The checklist has to be different because it's no longer about winning pieces or checkmating. Obviously, I can't checkmate with just these pawns. So it's about pawn races, and sometimes it's about stalemate or a draw due to insufficient material. We definitely don't want that. I've only got 2 pawns. They can't get at this one right now because their bishop, just can't see this friendly pawn sitting here because it's on a dark square. I'm going to use process of elimination just because there are so few pieces on the board, and I am playing with the black pieces, so I just have these 3. We can eliminate this c pawn because it can't move at all. I'm going to go ahead and eliminate the d pawn as well because if I move that, they take it. So that leaves a king move. The thing that I would obviously play in a game here is taking the pawn, but because it's a puzzle, I'm suspecting that might not be it. But is there a reason why I wouldn't take their pawn? That's the obvious one to me, so I'm going to look at that first. If I take the pawn, they would be able to check me, but then I would just get their bishop, and then I could promote. So I don't think they would check me. So is there some sort of downside to this? Because the other options are going up beside the pawn to protect my rear one. I'm pretty sure it's not to go over here because then they get to save their bishop and the pawn at the same time, right? Because the bishop and the pawn would protect each other because their pawns are going this way. So, but I think they could do the same thing if I went to the other side or moved over here or went down there. Those are my other choices. I think it's got to be taking the pawn, right? And then I can get out of the way of my c-pawn and move it forward. I'm sorry, I can't see a downside to taking the pawn. Oh, there wasn't a downside to taking the pawn. Well, now I want to move over here and move this pawn forward. Is there something wrong with that? I guess I could go toward the bishop, but then they just get in front of that pawn, right? And then I wasted a move with my king. Okay, I'm going to move my king to d3. Oh, they did get in front of the pawn, but now look at this. That seems obvious. Well, also, I can't move this front pawn. So using process of elimination, I think at this point it would be silly to move my king. I can't move my king forward, right? Their bishop's covering 2 of those squares. Their king's covering 2 squares. So I would only have 3 possible moves with the king, 2 of which seem pretty bad because they get in the way of my pawn. The other one allows them to get my pawn. So moving the pawn forward is the only thing that makes sense. Again, moving the pawn forward is the only thing that makes sense because, again, I don't want to promote and lose my other pawn. Well, now I'm going to get their bishop, I'm pretty sure. And they took it, so I'm going to take back. Okay, yeah, I shouldn't have got 10 points for that, and it should not be rated 2,000, I don't think. I'm not saying it should be rated beginner level, like 400, because there were a lot of moves here, but every one of them followed by just process of elimination. Nothing else made sense at each point. I would have rated this maybe closer to 1,000 instead of 2,000. If I had any guarantee that the next puzzle would be easy, I would go ahead and do another one, but I have just enough time for an easy one, so if it's a complicated one, I wouldn't have time. Thank you for spending your time here. I feel a lot better about this session, even though a couple of them seemed kind of tough. Not this one, but a couple of them. And I finally got above 1750 in this puzzle run. So, I'll see you next time.